Howdy, and welcome to part 2 of my car abuse stories. This is following up to the Saturn SL1. This is for the Sentra that I had. I had a B15 Sentra SER, non-spec V, and we'll get into that a little bit later. To start this off, I want to say, I'm sorry, Dad. I know you're going to watch this. Want to apologize in advance, but luckily it's been over a decade and a half, and I hope that you can forgive me for being a young idiot. Now I am an old idiot. I love you. Following up to the Saturn that I blew up, I am car shopping. Back then, car shopping was done through something called Craigslist. It was reputable back then. We didn't have Facebook Marketplace back then. Not saying Facebook Marketplace is reputable, because it's totally not. I can't stand selling things and buying things on Facebook Marketplace. Right after the Sentra, I really desperately wanted a Honda Civic Si EM1. I wanted it in that beautiful electron blue. I wanted that sweet VTEC from the B16 A2. I wanted all of that. To take a step back, the way I learned about cars, Auto Trader had this car comparison thing to where you can compare 4 cars at one time, any and every car, and it will give you line by line stats of everything. Horsepower, mile per gallon, dimensions, weight, everything. And you can compare and just look at everything. This is how I learned a lot about cars. That was part of my autotistic nature, was to look at all these cars and compare. Even if I couldn't afford them, I just wanted to learn about cars, and that's how I did it. Back at this time, the EM1 Civic was attainable. It was well priced. This was 2007. EM1 Civic was a 99, I think, through 2000 car. They're within the price bracket of what my dad had given me. Before the Civic Si, I had an idea to get a 240SX S13, just like what my mom used to have. That was immediately shot down by my mother and father, saying absolutely not. Why? Because my dad's experience with the 240SX was one time in the rain, he spun out because, you know, no traction control, no ABS back then. And my mother, that was her car. And she was like, absolutely not. It's a sports car. You're not getting a sports car as a teenage boy. Back to the Civic Si. I go on Craigslist and find an abundant amount of SIs for right in the price bracket. I'm very excited. I'm like, okay, Mom, I've got a few cars we can go look at. She's like, cool, but also time out real quick. You're very excited. What's the horsepower on this car? Of course, I'm like, only 160 horsepower. That was followed by an immediate no, absolutely not. At that time, I pretty much found out my threshold for horsepower was 120 or less. And the way I found this out specifically was because I downgraded to a Honda Civic EX, which at the time and also now is not a very desirable Honda. It's a very, okay, Shelby. Let's see if we can get the Shelby to play. Going back to the Honda Civic EX, I'm like, look, Mom, oh, wow. He got on off. What are you doing? Typical Mustang people. Going back to the Honda EX, well, I can find one of these. And she's like, how much horsepower does that one have? If I recall, it's like 127 horsepower. I'm like, 127 horsepower? She's like, nope, absolutely not. She's like, you need 120 or less. Again, this is coming from the 100 horsepower Saturn that I had. My smart dumbass goes on Auto Trader and I do the comparison and I get this really good idea. And I found out about the Nissan Sentra SER Spec V. Bring my mom to the computer and show her a base Sentra 1.8 liter. What are you doing? What are you doing? You ever just have somebody in a Nissan do Nissan activities and just come and ride your ass? Yeah, me too. I start shopping for Sentra SER Spec Vs. I'm not going to tell my mom that it's a Spec V. So she's seeing the regular base Sentra at the time. She thinks that's what I'm looking for. I'm not. I end up finding this red, beautiful SER. So not Spec V. The difference between the SER and the Spec V is they have the same motor. However, the Spec V has a 6-speed with an LSD, Spec V badges, a little bit of an upgraded suspension, and the SER has the 5-speed non-LSD with 10 less horsepower, no Spec V badges. There's probably some other things, but those are the main differences. It's a 2002, and I gotta say, it's a good-looking car. I still think they look really good to this day. If you were to look at an R34 and look at this car, this is the R34 Skyline that Mom tells you we have at home. It actually has a really handsome face because there was 2 B15s. There was a bucktooth version, which is not a good looking car, and then the one prior is what I got. So we meet with the seller. He's a little bit older, and I mean older at the course. I'm like 17 at the time and he's like maybe 30. Car's in great shape, still has that like really good new car smell. It's extremely clean inside. The guy's taking very good care of this car and it's a good deal. So my dad finalizes the paperwork, gets everything put together, we buy the car. The B15 platform is my first dive into motorsports and also tinkering with cars. I used to live on the forums. Y'all remember the forums, right? Forums were basically Reddit before Reddit, and I was on the B15 forums religiously. Found out that there was an issue with these cars. On the factory header, there's this pre-cat, and what the pre-cat could do was break into smaller pieces and get sucked back into the exhaust runners and blow your engine potentially, which was a no-no. So I freaked out, but I also held a job at the Salt Lake Barbecue. High school kid working at Salt Lake Barbecue, just saving up some money. And those that are from Texas know Salt Lake Barbecue is fantastic. If you've never been and you make a trip to Texas around Austin, I used to work at the original one. It's a good staple country barbecue restaurant. You have to go. It's BYOB. It's like a whole day adventure. Totally do it. So I'm working there and we make really good money. I'm like an expo line runner and I used to do pretty well there for a high school kid. So I researched the cheapest yet the best quality header, which at the time was McGann, whatever you want to call it, racing. Back then they were trying to really take off in the US market, and this is when they were kind of newer, and I was like, man, this actually looks like a really good header. So I order this 4-to-1 header. Car people, when we order our parts, we get so excited, and there's this purgatory period where we're waiting for the part to get there, and when the part gets to your doorstep, it is such a good feeling. That was my first experience ordering aftermarket parts. I remember getting the box right to my doorstep, big box. I immediately open it up. It's a beautiful, shiny chrome header, good welds. It's in good shape, like it's a good quality part. So I am like hype about this. Again, the Sentra is the car that I first started tinkering on. And before I even got the header, the first thing I did, like the first weekend I got the car, was clean out the throttle body, because they were saying on the forums, you should totally clean out your throttle body. Sure enough, the throttle body was dirty. I remember being super gunky. So I took that apart. Following that, there's this other thing you could do where you take away these butterfly valve runner things within the intake manifold, because the B15 was powered by a QR25DE motor, QR engine code, 2.5 liter DE direct injection, dual overhead camshaft, all that good Nissan nomenclature that we love. And what the QRs had was this little thing called CVTC, which was, I think, continuously variable valve timing control. It's like a rip-off VTEC. Again, going back to the stupid joke, when mom says we have VTEC at home, this is what the VTEC at home is. There is no camshaft changeover like VTEC whatsoever. In the intake manifold itself, it had 2 sets of runners. After a certain RPM, I think it was like 5,000 RPM or like 5,500, the secondary intake runners would open up and let in more air. And it actually did sound like VTEC. There was way more induction noise, and it was really cool because it actually did give you a kick of horsepower, and you could feel that. It was super cool. And to do this job, you had to be very careful because the little manifold runners themselves, the valves, had these tiny little screws on them. And if you kept the manifold on the car, which I did, you could actually have one of those little tiny guys drop into the intake manifold and into your engine. And that's, oops, big sorry. But I did not drop anything in there. And then something to do with Loctiting them as well, I can't remember. So I had already started tinkering on this car. I got my header, went to my buddies that was good at working on cars, because that's all him and his father did. And we knocked out the header within like 4 hours. It was awesome. The car sounded great. It definitely had more horsepower. I didn't have to worry about the pre-cat breaking apart. I was tinkering cars, modifying cars. I know these are very small jobs, but being 17, like, you feel so cool doing this stuff. That was my first hit. That was the rush right there. I love tinkering with cars. This is the car I went to college in, and I went to University of Texas at San Antonio, which was about an hour and a half away from where I lived. I'll tell you this, I used to make that drive in 45 minutes because I was one of those jackasses weaving in and out of traffic, weaving in tight spots between 18-wheelers. It's basically what swimming is today. My teenage brain telling me I'm invincible. Yeah, I can make that gap. And it was the whole like, no hesitation, go for it. If you don't go for it, you're gonna mess up. Luckily, I never hurt anybody. I never hurt myself. Very stupid. I was young and dumb. Now I'm old and dumb. But I used to make that drive to San Antonio in 45 minutes, which is crazy. Every time I drove the SER, I was driving wide open throttle about 70% of the time, which is a lot. Yet I still took care of the car. I still did my oil changes on time, still washed it. I still took very good care of the car. I was just abusive with the motor. This car is the gateway to everything cars that I'm involved with to this day, because I lived on campus and I used to walk to campus. That meant I had to go through the parking lot. And how I met a lot of my friends and got things going was I decided I'm gonna go ahead and organize a car meet. What I did as I walked to class was take sticky notes and write, hey, you've got a really cool car. Give me a text or call at this number if you're interested in meeting up for a car meet. And I used to leave that on really cool car windows. Made a lot of friends that way, and we used to street race. Back then, UTSA didn't have a whole lot of traffic near the campus on the access road. And if you've never been to Texas and you don't know what an access road or frontage road is, it's basically you have a highway, then you have an extra road on the side there that's almost like a mini highway with these U-turns. They're really nice, really convenient. With my new car buddies, what I used to do is organize car meets to where it would be late night, like on a Wednesday or Thursday. I would buy walkie-talkies, and then there was this long stretch of access road that was probably about 1.5 miles to 2 miles to where it was just one way, and you hit the U-turn, come on back. We'd post up at the corner of the intersection, and we'd have walkie-talkies to where we can say, cop, 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 in case there were any cops. And we would alert those who were racing. And I'll tell you what, that SER would absolutely spank just about anything from 0 to 80 miles per hour because it had so much torque. That car generated so much torque, I used to give my friends whiplash. But past 80 miles per hour, if I was racing something like my buddy's Prelude or an Integra GSR, the Hondas would just keep trucking on me, and that was pretty much it. So I had to get ahead pretty quickly. We would street race, we would go to car meets together, and we would do the weaving in and out, stupid, fast and furious BS. Eventually, we got kicked out of the certain area we used to meet, and I used to organize meets at Lot 13. If y'all are still doing car meets at Lot 13, that would blow my mind. Shout out Lot 13. And then eventually the car meets got pretty dark to where people would actually do like crazy street racing with like really high horsepower cars. There was wrecks, there was fist fights, there was people getting shot at. Like, it was bad because they were all doing it for money. I never did any of that, and I got out of the scene. Me and my friends were like, this is like, whoa, 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 this escalated quickly. Not saying I was precursor to that, it's just we would see all that happening. We're like, we don't want to do this anymore. So what we ended up doing is we would all go to San Antonio Raceway, which is this drag strip. RIP, they shut it down. We used to go run our 15-second quarter miles, try to break into the 14s, which would be like quick. You know, back then, these cars were not fast. But to us back then, it was fast. GoPro overheated, but we're back. Got the AC vent pointed right at this bee. Me and my friends, to mitigate the street racing and all that, we ended up joining SASCA, which is San Antonio Sports Car Association Autocrossing. This is my first taste of hitting cones. Was back at the AT&T Center in San Antonio. They used to have us go in the big parking lot and go through cones. Back then, I didn't know that driving smooth is fast. I thought that turning as quickly as possible around the cones was the fastest way around, which is totally not it at all. You're scrubbing speed. Regardless, this is how we learn, right? Me and my friends would go out there on Sunday mornings and have a great time. And I think it was like my 4th or 5th autocross when we went out there. Everything's going fine. Again, mind you, I did take great care of this car. But at the last autocross, on the very last run, my friend is sitting next to me, and we're having a good time. I have a good run, it feels good, and we're cheering, high-fiving each other, just piping each other up, and we get through the gates where we get to staging, and I hear ticking noise, and I'm like, not again. And it's coming for the motor. We pull off to the side, like, holy crap. Instead of towing my car back because I'm a broke-ass college kid, we end up limping it back on the other side of San Antonio, which is like a 30-minute trek. Get it back to our apartment complex, and luckily all the car friends kind of are collective in this one apartment complex, and I have a mechanically inclined friend that's like, dude, we can just go to a junkyard, rip a motor out for like 300, 500 bucks. I'm like, that's a great idea. Start tearing down the car right there in the apartment complex parking lot. We take off the head, and I learned by reverse engineering about how to take apart an engine. The piston rings were caked up. It was not looking good in there. But me and my buddy end up getting the full long block out of the car eventually, and we just leave it there in the parking lot, thinking the apartment complex is going to be okay with it. They were in fact not okay with it. The car was sitting for a little while, and I mean a little while as in a month, because broke-ass college kid, I was scrounging to get together money just so we can go to the junkyard and get a new motor. Between that, I have a really bad past of being a crazy party animal. I used to throw a lot of parties. One time I'm throwing this party, and I'm with my friends, and I'm like, hey, drunkenly, like, let's go walk to the other side of the apartment complex, because that's where my other friend lived, and let's go check out the Sentra. We walk to the other side of the apartment complex, we get where the Sentra is, and the Sentra is no longer there. I am freaking out. I end up drunkenly bawling. We're like, it's okay, we're gonna call the tow tow truck place in the morning tomorrow. Call up the tow truck place and they're like, yeah, a few $100 to get it out. The apartment complex asked us to move it because they thought it was an inoperable vehicle. For some reason, even though I had a parking pass, for some reason they decided to take it and not notify me of it, even though we're supposed to report with the apartment complex that, hey, this is my car. Okay, cool. I'm a little set back. I need to work more shifts to get the car out of the impound lot, not knowing that daily interest incurs on a tow truck lot. Really shady. I hate tow truck places. They're super seedy. If you're a tow truck driver by trade, I mean, good on you, I guess. It's just such a grimy profession. It's just a grimy business. Scourge of the earth. I finally get the money scrounged up. I get like $350 or whatever they told me. And I get to the place and they're like, no, it's $800 because daily interest. And this is a few weeks after. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I go, can you guys stop doing that? Because I can't afford that. And they're like, we don't care. Just a wild business practice. And I'm like pleading with them. They don't care because, of course, scourge of the earth. I probably should have asked my parents, but we were all kind of going through this weird struggle time, and I was struggling. Again, this is like 2008, 2009. Probably should have told them. So again, Dad, I am sorry when you see this. And I end up leaving the Sentra there saying, okay, I'm going to figure out a way to get this taken care of. Before I know it, it's $1,200 to get the Sentra out. There is no cap on the incurrence of daily interest, or it enrages me to this day, like how bad it was. And I didn't want to ask my parents for $1,200, $1,300, whatever it's going to be, just to get it out. And I really should have. So the Sentra was gone just like that. I never got the Sentra back. It was a really bad situation. Now that I look back on it, yes, I'm an idiot. I still am an idiot, but I've learned a lot more than what I used to know. Being young and dumb is all about the life experience, and I certainly went through a few life experiences. I have more stories of more cars that I have gone through that I, for some reason, just never learned. But I love this car. Again, it was my first car I tinkered with. It was the first car that I did motorsports with. It was a great learning platform. I had big plans for it. I wanted to turbo it. I wanted to modify it, body kit, all the good stuff. And I never got a chance to. This turn from this car to all the other cars coming in kind of spiraled out of control. But you'll have to tune in next time for the next car, because like I said, there's a lot more. Hopefully this is a learning lesson to anyone and everyone that is younger, to monitor your shit at your apartment complex, and also find a nice garage to work on your car in. Don't work on it out in the open, and also don't trust tow truck companies. By the way, this is not my first run-in with the tow truck company. There's another car that ends up getting impounded at the tow truck company later on. We'll get to that car eventually. That'll be in probably an episode or two. Thank you so much for getting this far. Let me know if you've blown up a car, or if you've got a car taken away from you, or just your dumb stories as well. Maybe we can hash it out together and pour one out for our fallen comrades. Until next time, bye!
Be sure to like and subscribe.